Some criminal cases are difficult because the killer leaves nothing behind. But others are difficult because every clue seems to point in a different direction. This case became one of the most frustrating mysteries in American police history because nothing about it stayed simple for long. Every answer created two more questions. Every witness had a different story. Every suspect seemed suspicious, but never enough to fully prove guilt. And even now, after years of investigation, the full truth still feels out of reach. It all began when a body was found under strange and disturbing circumstances. Right from the start, police knew something was off. The scene didn't feel normal. The location was odd. The evidence didn't fit together neatly. And perhaps most troubling of all, investigators struggled to understand the victim's life, identity, and final movements. What should have been the first step in solving the case quickly became one of the biggest obstacles. Police started with the victim, hoping their background would reveal motive, enemies, or connections. But instead, the victim's life only made the mystery deeper. Different people described them in completely different ways. Some said they were quiet and harmless. Others claimed they were secretive, troubled, or hiding something. There were rumors about hidden relationships, fake stories, and personal problems no one fully understood. The victims seemed to mean different things to different people, and that made it hard to know where the truth actually began. Then came the witness statements, and that's where the case really started falling apart. Some people claimed they had seen the victim shortly before death. Others said they saw them with someone suspicious. But the stories didn't match. One witness would describe a man. Another would describe a woman. One said the victim looked scared. Another said they looked perfectly calm. Some statements sounded detailed and believable, but later parts of those stories couldn't be confirmed. Instead of building a timeline, police found themselves stuck between multiple versions of the same events. And then there was the evidence itself. There were clues at the scene, but none of them told a complete story. Some signs suggested the crime had been carefully planned. Other details made it look rushed, emotional, or even staged. Investigators couldn't tell whether they were looking at a murder scene, a body dump, or a setup designed to confuse them. Certain pieces of evidence seemed important, but when tested against the timeline, they didn't always make sense. It felt as if someone had left behind just enough to keep the case alive, while hiding the one thing police needed most, a clear truth. As detectives widened the investigation, more possible suspects appeared. There was no shortage of suspicious people. A former partner with a weak alibi. A person close to the victim who changed their story more than once. Someone connected financially. Someone connected emotionally. Someone whose name kept surfacing in the background, but who never stayed in focus long enough for police to pin anything on them. Every suspect looked possible. Every suspect also had just enough uncertainty around them to avoid charges. One of the most frustrating parts of the case was how often people seemed to hide things. Some witnesses waited too long to come forward. Others gave statements that changed over time. A few people appeared to know more than they were saying, but proving that was another matter entirely. In major investigations, even small lies can destroy the path to the truth. In this case, lies and half-truths may have shaped the entire direction of the investigation from the very beginning. As years passed, the case became even more tangled. New investigators reviewed the file, hoping fresh eyes would spot what others had missed. Forensic experts re-examined old evidence. Some findings supported the original theory. Others challenged it completely. Questions came up about whether the victim had been killed where the body was found or somewhere else. Some experts believed the crime was personal and emotional. Others thought it was cold, planned, and deliberate. The same evidence kept producing different conclusions, which only made the mystery more painful. The media also played a major role in keeping the case alive. Newspapers, documentaries, and later internet forums all helped turn the investigation into a national obsession. People built theories around every clue. Some believed the case involved blackmail. Others thought it was connected to corruption, secret relationships, or a cover-up. There were even theories that the victim had been living a hidden life no one truly knew about. The more attention the case received, the more ideas flooded in. But none of them could fully explain everything. That's what made this case so different from a normal unsolved mystery. Usually, there's one big missing piece. Here, almost every piece felt damaged. The victim's background was unclear. The timeline was shaky. The witness accounts conflicted. The crime scene raised more questions than answers. The suspects were suspicious, but never solid enough. And over time, memories faded, evidence aged, and some of the people connected to the case disappeared, died, or simply stopped talking. At several points, police believed they were close to solving it. A new witness would appear. A forgotten document would be found. Advances in forensic testing would create hope. For a moment, it would seem like the truth was finally within reach. But each time, the case slipped away again. A statement would fall apart. A clue would turn out to be less important than expected. A theory would fail because one key detail didn't fit. That cycle of hope and disappointment became one of the defining features of the case. And maybe that's the most haunting part of all. This wasn't a case with no path forward. It was a case with too many paths, and almost all of them led nowhere. Every direction looked promising at first. Every suspect seemed possible. Every theory had something convincing about it. But nothing held together strongly enough to bring justice. It was like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces belonged to a different box. There's also a darker possibility that investigators had to consider. What if the confusion wasn't accidental? What if someone had intentionally created it? What if the victim's life, the crime scene, and the misleading clues had all been manipulated to throw police off track? That would explain why the case felt so chaotic while also seeming strangely controlled. It would explain why detectives could never settle on one clean theory. But even that idea brings its own questions. If someone was clever enough to design a misleading crime scene, why leave anything behind at all? Why create a mystery instead of simply making the victim disappear? In the end, this case became bigger than just one investigation. It became a symbol of how fragile the truth can be once fear, secrecy, and mistakes enter the picture. It showed how a case can collapse under the weight of contradictions. It showed how witnesses can damage an investigation by lying, how assumptions can send police in the wrong direction, and how time can slowly erase the small details that might have solved everything. And behind all of that is the victim, a real person whose story was lost in the noise of suspicion and confusion. That's important to remember, because while the mystery fascinates people, the case is still about a life that ended violently and a truth that still hasn't been fully uncovered. Somewhere in all the lies, rumors, evidence, and forgotten interviews is the real story of what happened. Someone knew more than they said. Someone saw something important. Someone chose silence. And that silence may be the reason this case remains one of the most confusing in American police history. Maybe one day, a final piece of evidence will emerge. Maybe DNA, a confession, or a forgotten witness statement will finally connect everything. Or maybe the truth has already been buried beneath decades of false leads and broken memories. That uncertainty is what keeps this case alive in the minds of investigators and true crime followers even today. Because more than anything, this mystery reminds us that some cases don't stay unsolved because there are no clues. They stay unsolved because the truth is buried under too much confusion. And that is exactly why this case still stands as one of the most baffling investigations in American police history. Not because it lacked evidence, but because it had too much of the wrong kind. Too many stories, too many secrets, too many possibilities, and not enough certainty to bring the real answer into the light. If you enjoyed this story and want more dark, mysterious, and mind-bending crime cases, make sure to subscribe to CaseVanta. Because here, we don't just tell true crime stories, we dig into the mysteries that still refuse to let go.